Hello, dear friends. I'm here with you, Sofya Dorinskaya, President of the International Bureau for Human Rights in Mental Health and head of the Sofya Dorinskaya Center for Medical Information. Today I want to talk with you about the nature of panic attacks, episodes, fear, and the state when a person feels like they can't breathe, as if they can't get enough air. Episodes of fear of death. A state of suddenly increased heartbeat, or when you are sleeping at night and suddenly your stomach twists with terror and you don't understand, and then this panic sets in. Today we will talk in detail about what this specific medical condition is, the various origins of where it actually comes from, and exactly why licensed psychiatrists or clinical psychologists might prescribe you certain treatments, certain substances, and in general how this whole mechanism works. So let's first break down which part of the nervous system is at work when a person experiences terror, fear, anxiety, and so on. The part of the nervous system that is active in a person is called the sympathetic nervous system, that very state of the human body. Let me repeat once more. It is specifically the animal component of a person, if you will. This is our organism. So when the body is in a state of anxiety, fear, or anticipation of danger, the sympathetic nervous system is at work. Emotionally, this is described as the fight or flight state. This is the range of emotions, the range of sensations a person experiences. Because after all, a human is not just an animal. A person is aware that some kind of anxiety or fear is happening. And it is precisely here that the sympathetic nervous system is active. But where does this state even come from? Now, I want to ask you one simple question, especially those people who experience these sudden waves of terror, fear, panic attacks, heart palpitations, and so on. Do you think your life is actually under threat? I think all of you will answer this question. You perceive your entire life as if it is constantly some kind of overwhelming, ever-present threat to your well-being. You are always expecting trouble. You are always expecting that prices will go up, that utilities will increase after the new year. You worry about what will happen with your job, what will happen with your salary, what the future holds for your children, and if there is some situation right now, then you feel you need to worry about it. You need to worry about whether your family is strong, whether everything is okay with your husband or wife, and so on. In other words, if you look at your life, you are constantly living in a state, it is a state of persistent chronic terror, or intense fear, or overwhelming anxiety. You could also describe it as never feeling safe or secure. You often feel that life is inherently dangerous and full of risks, that life is deeply unpredictable and uncertain, and that you simply cannot control the direction of your own life. And this means that both physiologically and emotionally, you live in this state of persistent, overwhelming anxiety and constant danger. And naturally, your physical body lives in this heightened state as well. You might ask me, well, how do we end up there and get stuck? A child is born somewhere in joy, everything is good for them, everything is wonderful. But as life goes on, as life experience accumulates, as failures, disappointments, and traumas pile up. For women, childbirth is a painful and difficult experience. There can also be unconscious moments, surgeries, and so on. And so, a person sinks into this state of the autonomic nervous system, specifically the sympathetic state, where the body starts to perceive life itself as a certain threat, and everything around the person. One way or another, they may associate various things with it, with some kind of threat, some kind of danger, with the expectation of unpleasant events, and so on. And in this way, a person ends up, this is quite a wide range, I can say, fight or flight. It starts with a person becoming rude, aggressive, responding sharply even to completely insignificant minor remarks. Being rude? Yes, so this is all within that range. Then it goes further down, and here the person has already entered a state where they are frightened, they run away, at the slightest responsibility they drop everything, they are in a panic, and so on. So this is quite a wide range of a person's emotional state. And this is exactly what happens to you when you feel anxiety, fear, terror. It's that sudden wave that comes over you. When you go to a psychiatrist or psychotherapist, I now hear that they are already starting to prescribe these substances. What do they prescribe for you? They prescribe you atheractics, anxiolytics or tranquilizers. These are all calming substances which do what? They block the action of the sympathetic nervous system. Here the hormone adrenaline is at work. If you read about the mechanisms of action, all these substances in one way or another block the receptors that perceive adrenaline and its various components. You can simply look this up. So what happens when, by chemical means, a person's nervous system is blocked? All these substances, as I have said many times and will probably repeat many more times, all these substances put the body into a state of apathy. This is the state when a person stops feeling anything at all. They no longer feel, yes, indeed, they no longer feel those attacks of fear. They don't feel any emotional surges either. But if you ask yourself, it feels as if you've become an unemotional person. A bit wooden. A bit like you're not really here, not yourself. All these substances, by gradually poisoning and adding a little bit of these neurotropic toxins, put a person into a state of apathy. And below apathy, naturally, comes death. This is open statistics. If you read about it, people who regularly use psychoactive substances do not live long. Everyone knows this. And another major problem, if all this isn't already a problem, is that when you try to stop taking these substances, those episodes of fear become even more intense. They become even stronger, even sharper. Why? That is because when you finally remove that protective chemical barrier, your physical body is still right here. And roughly speaking, it's like, oh my, I kept producing all this adrenaline. Turns out it wasn't actually reaching anywhere. But my body is still in a state of danger, and it gives such a dose that it just feels like your heart is about to jump out of your throat. And it really is a terrible state to be in. You start taking these substances again, and that's when you find yourself trapped. It's truly an unpleasant condition. The question is, what should you do? First, for those who managed to hold out and didn't start taking them. All these psychoactive substances, as I mentioned, tranquilizers, atheractics, and so on. Now let's look at the situation analytically. A person finds themselves, as they see it, in a threatening environment. And here we need to break down this threatening situation into its components. And the components are the biological aspect of the threat and the psychological, so to speak. So one of the biological components of the threat is this. It's hunger. Here I want to remind you of some information from one of my videos, where I talked about acquired predisposition to mental disorders, which was described by academician Maya Sishchev Vladimir Nikolaevich. He explained that a person who has acquired a predisposition to mental disorders only needs a 10% drop in blood sugar levels to trigger a state of severe, even the most severe, neurosis or psychosis. An ordinary person would need a 50% drop in blood sugar levels. So hunger is something you must completely avoid. In this case, food is your medicine. What does this mean? A 10% drop in blood sugar occurs when you haven't eaten for more than 3 hours. Therefore, your meals should be frequent and spaced every 2.5 to 3 hours. The first sign that you've missed your meal or that you didn't eat enough before is when you start to feel tense or irritable, when you suddenly snap at a normal phrase like, "Ugh, what's wrong?" That's it. This should be a signal for you that you need to go eat. What should you eat? Not sugar. Your diet should be very high quality protein rich with complex carbohydrates, vegetables, meat, eggs, cheeses. Basically foods like these, not sugar, not sweets. I'll talk about this in another video because there are two systems involved. The insulin and glucagon systems, which are metabolic systems. And I'll explain it in more detail another time, but if you eat sugar, you'll only make things worse. this situation with your blood sugar levels. So the first thing that matters is your diet. I'll say right away, if you're on some kind of diet, and for example, you don't eat after 6 in the evening, that's a direct path to panic attacks, especially if you've already started having them, or if you wake up at night for some reason. And you feel that surge of terror, your stomach tightens, your heart starts racing, that means first and foremost that you're hungry. You need to calmly and analytically assess the situation. You should get up and eat. Prepare yourself some food. It shouldn't be too cold or too hot, and it shouldn't be too heavy. So, not a whole plate of dumplings, because otherwise you'll just be digesting and won't be able to fall asleep. Maybe 2 boiled eggs, a piece of lean meat, again, not cold. So, prepare yourself some light food like that, and eat. Protein shakes from sports stores, which I've already mentioned, work very well in this situation. Tablets, these Unilever liver tablets. You can simply choose here. Now, thank God you can pick some very high quality supplements from sports stores. So that's the nutrition part. The next thing is, of course, eliminating any deficiencies in all the nutrients a person might have. This is absolutely essential here, because vitamin deficiencies are another factor that predisposes a person to mental disorders. Naturally, it is important for me to mention that if you have any underlying physical medical pathology here, for example, if your stomach is causing you constant pain and discomfort, or you have a chronic heart condition, or perhaps you are suffering from osteochondrosis. That is, if you have some real physical pathology that constantly triggers these anxious impulses, you absolutely must treat it. You need to see a doctor. If you have gastritis, enteritis, and so on, you must strictly follow your therapeutic diets and watch what you eat. So here, your role is important. It's your attending physicians who determine whether you have any pathology and so on. So, to repeat, you need to monitor your blood sugar levels to make sure they don't drop by more than 10%. This includes nutrition and eliminating deficiencies. You need to treat all your chronic or acute conditions. And next, this is where you need to engage your mind. The goal of your actions is to push yourself out of this dangerous state by any means, to lift yourself above this level of life, to at least move yourself into boredom and, of course, ideally into joy. What do you need to do for this? First of all, you need to stop watching TV and sitting on social media. And stop reading all those scary political news stories and in general any upsetting things about unfortunate cats, dogs, and so on, just everything like that. You need to turn all of that off. You can simply run an experiment, cut all of this out for 2 weeks. Just stop going online, turning on the TV or listening to the radio. Just stop doing it. What should you do? You need to organize your work and rest schedule so that you can rest well. And in your free time, you should go for walks, calm, peaceful walks. Go to the forest, or if you live near water, to the sea or the river. If you live in the city and it's hard to get to the forest, make sure to visit museums, classical ones, without any, those kinds of social paintings that once again start to stir something up in your soul. Museums, calm films, music, listen to those if you can. Not the kind like tun 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 120 beats per minute. No. Music should be very calm, soothing. In other words, you simply need to use your intellect to organize your life so that remove as much as possible all stressful, irritating, and threatening elements from your life. Next, please analyze your environment. If there are people you find unpleasant to communicate with, don't interact with them. If there are places you don't like to visit, don't go to those places. In other words, just analyze what's going on. And just try to eliminate as much as possible. For example, if there is some coworker at your workplace, you can't even stand to hear his voice, and just the sight of him turns you inside out. Turn your workspace so you don't see him. Put on headphones and play, some calming classical music so you don't hear or see him at all. In other words, organize your life in such a way as to eliminate all these anxiety-provoking things as much as possible. Moments from your life. That is, you just need to use your mind to sort of push yourself forward. And if you truly feel this deep sense of boredom, believe me, at that very moment, you will start to clearly see how these overwhelming waves of fear and these intense waves of terror will gradually begin to recede from your mind. And this is exactly what we need to do in this situation. If you are currently prescribed and taking any tranquilizers, of course, it's an incredibly difficult situation to manage. You need to understand very clearly that they have a wide range of potential side effects. And undoubtedly, most people often do not feel truly healthy or vibrant when they take them. If you stop taking them abruptly, you might be hit by a wave. That horror, fear, panic attacks, and so on. What should you do? What do we do? So while individuals are consistently taking their prescribed medications, their psychiatric prescriptions, they carefully address their underlying deficiencies, and they meticulously sift through the various aspects of their daily lives to make absolutely sure that nothing disturbs them. And when the deficiencies have already been addressed little by little, they start to gradually reduce these doses, but by then the body already has the resources to cope with this surge of adrenaline so that the process goes more or less smoothly. I know people who by sheer willpower, usually young people, just stop everything abruptly and they get twisted up like that, but they endure it. But if after quitting you haven't addressed your nutrient deficiencies, you won't feel better. Not much better afterwards. Why? Because all psychoactive substances, and I'll repeat this again, the essence of their mechanism of action is creating nutrient deficiencies. And the nutrient deficiencies themselves, that's pain. That's the pain that keeps the body stuck in this fight or flight range. But this pain, this deficiency, it's not yet so... It doesn't have a strong effect on the body. That is, if you go for a checkup, your organs will be healthy. But the cellular pain, this diffuse or disseminated pain, you could also call it scattered, will keep you in this state of fear. That's why, of course, if you have the opportunity, address your nutrient deficiencies. And all your efforts should be aimed at making sure that your condition, your body, and your mind can, so to speak, help to gently nudge you away from this situation, and at least transition you smoothly into a state of boredom. I truly hope that the information in this video was clear and helpful for you. If you have any questions specifically on the topic, please write them to me on my website, because then they come directly to my email and I can work with these questions. I hope I explained everything clearly. Of course, it's your decision whether to take certain substances or not. But you should always understand the flip side as well. You should always understand the price you pay for it. I hope this video was helpful to you.